Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today is my birthday. I'm turning 36. It's my second year of being a cougar, and I'm having a very special episode of Splat from the Past because I'm going to be interviewing Lester Gidley from the 1984 teen cult sex comedy classic Weekend Pass, Peter Ellenstein. You may remember him from that movie. He's the nerd who has an Asian massage girl walk all over him with high heels on. I'm having him on the show today to talk about that and his small roles in another guest's movies, Diane Franklin. He was also in Last American Virgin and Better Off Dead with her. I'm having him on the show today. I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that stuff. And his father was the great character actor Robert Ellenstein, who was in North by Northwest. He played one of James Mason's thugs, along with Martin Landau. And he was the hotel manager in Brewster's Millions. And I'm having Peter on the show today. And also, I don't want to bring this up so early, but there's also a surprise in this episode that I just don't want to give away. So, here is my interview with Peter Ellenstein. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Tommy. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you, sir?
Sorry about the mix-up. I'm okay. Just spent over an hour, on the phone waiting for to get to somebody and then trying to get everything explained and everything. So I think I got it all worked out.
Okay, good.
So, sorry about that.
It's okay. It happens all the time. People get overwhelmed with things.
Yeah. How are things?
Oh, things are fantastic. It's my birthday today.
Oh, congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
How old are you?
36.
Oh, you're a kid.
Yeah, but I feel old, though, because I've experienced quite a bit in my life.
Yeah.
So,
what part of town are you in?
Redding, California.
Oh, you're in Redding. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, trying to get out to Los Angeles, though.
Yeah.
But welcome to the show. It's such a great honor to have you.
Oh, thank you very much. You flatter me.
My pleasure. So, going back in time, did you fall in love with acting early on?
Well, yeah, I kind of grew up with it because my father was an actor and director, and then my brother also was an actor, and so I grew up in the theater and going to movie sets and, and going sometimes with my father on auditions and all sorts of that. And he also taught, so we always had actors and writers and directors in the house. So I kind of grew up in the business, although I didn't start working in it until I was in my, late teens.
Yes, your father, Robert Ellenstein, was one of the bad guys in North by Northwest.
Right, and the president of the Federation in Star Trek 4.
Right.
I don't remember what the subtitle of that one was. The one with the whales.
Yeah, The Voyage Home.
So the original bad guy in the pilot of the Moonlighting TV series, the 2-hour one. So he did a lot of stuff and worked with a lot of people. Had a good career. Never made, a fortune, but had a pretty steadily working career, and then he also worked in the theater his whole life. So we were kind of drenched in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, I was just talking to my dad earlier. He was the hotel manager in Brewster's Millions.
Right.
That's one of our favorite movies. So when I was telling my dad that I was going to be interviewing the son of him, he was like, "Oh, good. Yeah, tell him that we love that movie."
That's funny.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, sadly, my dad died about 9 years ago, but he had a good life. And it was a very different world. The entertainment world is very different now than it was back then.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more opportunity for people to sort of help themselves in getting into it, but it's also people nowhere near as defined as how you get into it. It used to, there used to be just a few doors that you could knock on in order to get into the entertainment industry, and once you'd exhausted those, you knew whether either you were getting in or you weren't. But nowadays, there's hundreds and thousands of different ways in, and it provides for a lot more opportunity, but sort of a lot less conclusive determination as to whether you're going to end up making it or not, I think.
How many different ways was it to get in back then?
Well, back then, if you were an actor, basically you had your agent and or manager who submitted you to the handful of casting directors who were around, and that was how you got in. And maybe also if you were in the industry like I was, then occasionally a director would know that someone's son or something or daughter was trying to get in, and they might try and find them a little role to get them in. But if you didn't have your union card back then, you couldn't get into any of the auditions. And if you didn't have an agent, you couldn't get in. And it was a much smaller industry, and there were only a certain number of shows and a certain number of outlets. There were movies, and then there were basically network television shows, and that was about it. Soaps. Beyond that, and then commercials, of course. But beyond that, there were no other ways in. Now, people get in through the internet, through creating their own stuff on YouTube or Vimeo, and through creating, their own web pieces. It's like you can become an influencer and already get in. It's just there's so many ways of getting yourself noticed to potentially get into the industry. But the gatekeepers, it's just so diverse. You don't know what's going to work and what isn't. It feels more random in a lot of ways. Yeah,
you don't know what their business model is, and there's so much more.
It's changing all the time, And it's also, you could do, you used to make a lot more money if you were doing network TV. The residuals were good, the pay was good for day rates and things like that, and all of that has changed. So now the way money is made is very different as well. So
yeah, that's really unfortunate.
It's very wild. It's just different. I think it's the problem is changing so fast that it's hard for people to keep up. And when I talk to people who are working in the industry, it's amazing how quickly everyone is changing jobs on the other side of the camera and in the offices. It's people used to be at one place for a really long time, and now they aren't. They're bouncing around everywhere. Mm-hmm. And technology companies are becoming producers and distributors and broadcasters, and everyone's doing everything. But there's no this is where you go and how you do it. It's just kind of a Wild West. It's a very different feel.
Yeah, it definitely is strange. I'll tell you that. So right out of high school.
I don't think it's worse. I just think it's different. I think it's and there's a lot of very good stuff out there. There's a lot of really crappy stuff out there. But the issue is there isn't the same sort of sense of common, with one or two exceptions of that. When I was growing up, everybody watched the same handful of shows, so everyone had common references, and now they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a lot of people watch Game of Thrones. I didn't, but so many people. Yeah. They have some common references, or Amazing Mrs. Maisel, or The Sopranos, or something. But none of those shows have anything close to the viewership that the Mary Tyler Moore Show used to have, or All in the Family, or MASH.
I watched those shows. I didn't watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I didn't see it either. I heard it was really excellent, but I got turned off the first episode, but just by the gratuitous sex and violence. And I know that does grab a lot of people and get them in to watch the show, and then I guess the stories and characters became very interesting. But I just didn't. I was like, I don't mind nudity. I don't mind violence as long as it's really necessary to the storytelling. Mm-hmm. But if I feel like it's being put in just to grab my attention, it loses me. I'm much more interested in story and character.
I agree. Yeah, I'm all about story and character too. So right out of high school, did you get an agent?
I got my first agent. So I went right out of high school. I graduated a year early, And I went up to ACT in San Francisco for their summer program, and where I was in the same class with Elizabeth McGovern and Stephanie Shine, who ended up doing a lot of theater and running a Shakespeare company in Seattle, and Jennifer Gray, and a whole bunch of people who just happened to be in the same class. And so a lot of us went out and started trying to work. In fact, Elizabeth McGovern and I became friendly, and we went out and auditioned for agents together. My father directed us as a scene from our town, and we went out and auditioned for agents. We both got offered from the same agency, but she ended up going with an agent who had seen her in a high school play, which was a much more powerful agent. She didn't know it at the time, but that woman was a lot nicer to her than the receptionist at the agency I went to. And so she ended up doing that. So I got an agent, and it took me about maybe a year. I think I got the agent when I was maybe 17 and a half. And it took me about a year to get my first SAG job on a TV movie called Off the Minnesota Strip. Now, whether I was good when I did the reading, I don't know. I think it's possible I was... that the director had been someone who had known my father for years, and so maybe decided, all right, I've got some parts to give out, I'll give these high school parts. So I shot a few days on a TV movie called Off the Minnesota Strip, which was actually a pretty good TV movie starring Mare Winningham and Hal Holbrook and Michael Learned.
Yeah.
And then I did a few episodics and commercials. I did a couple episodes of Dot's Landing. I did a couple of industrial films, and then I got cast in Weekend Pass. Oh, I guess I did The Last American Virgin. I got a small part in that. So it was like, often you'd go in and you'd read for the leads in movies or in TV shows, and if they liked you, they then tried to, but they didn't think you were right for the lead or like someone better, they'd try to find you something else in the show. And so that was often how I got roles. Because the way that I looked was actually quite a bit different than my personality. I kind of looked like this innocent, sort of somewhat nerdy kind of guy, but my personality was much more kind of comedic, acerbic, intellectual, more driven, and so it didn't always match. So people often liked my reading, but I didn't always get the roles I was going out for. And then when I auditioned for the Weekend Pass, I actually thought I was right for a different role. And I asked to read for that. They'd liked me so much for the role that I read for that they ended up casting me. I kept thinking, sure, I'd really love to read for this other part. I wanted to read for the comedian in it. And instead they cast me as the nerd, so I played the nerd.
Yeah, the Last American Virgin is probably my favorite teen movie of the 80s. Diane Franklin, she's been on the podcast 6 times. She was my first guest.
Oh, great.
Yeah, she was my first guest, and she's just a lovely person. I adore her.
She was really sweet back then, too. She was always very nice to everybody.
Yeah.
And, in fact, I did both Last American Virgin and Better Off Dead with her. She was the lead, one of the leads in both those, and I just had supporting parts in both.
Yeah,
she was always a super nice person, just very sweet.
Yeah, I've heard she has not changed. Everybody just has always loved working with her.
Yeah, she's we're friends on Facebook, but I don't think we've spoken in 35 years.
Yeah, but her and I, we speak all the time, obviously, but yeah, I mean, she's working her way around the convention circuit, and she gets cast every now and then and stuff. And she's doing really good, because she took a long break to raise her kids and stuff. So do you have any memories of working with Boaz Davidson, the director?
I don't remember him very much, actually. I mean, I remember he had a big beard. I was basically in that movie, I was in a party scene. I think we shot 2 days or 3 days on it. It was a big party scene, and so they did a number of setups. And the only thing of mine that got left in is I think I ended up shoving Larry Monison, and he bumps into me. I'm wearing a Devo hat, and I shove him and tell him to watch where he's going or something. But there were lots of other stuff that was shot during that thing, and then they kept in the stuff that they liked. So I was sort of, if you blinked, you missed me in that movie. But I got residuals. So I think every once in a while I'll still get 3 cents for it when it plays on has enough downloads or whatever. So I don't have a big memory. Again, that was something where I think I read for one of the main people, but they didn't. One of my problems was I was also 6 feet tall, and so they often cast those teen movies with short people so that they could be shorter than the adults. So if you look at a lot of the movies, not with John Cusack in Better Off Dead, but in a lot of the other movies, they often cast shorter actors as the younger people. So, like in the one off the Minnesota Strip, I got cast as a basketball player. So, but it was it was fun. It was nice. I remember going to the premiere, and it was really fun. And all of the people on it were very nice. Lawrence and Steve Anton.
Joe Rubo.
Most of the time when people are working, they're very happy and they're nice and pleasant to each other.
In your experiences,
they're just so happy to have a job.
Yeah, in your experiences, you've had good ones.
Yeah, most of my experiences were good ones. Every once in a while, you'd be on a set that had a lot of tension on it, and that was not so much fun.
Mm-hmm. So Weekend Pass, yeah, I used to see this movie all the time on USA Up All Night back in the 90s. I used to just love this movie. So you auditioned for the role of Lester. Were you up against anybody else for it?
I don't know who else was up for it. It was funny. I remember the day that I had that audition. I think I had 3 or 4 auditions. I mean, because I was in the right age group at that time. They were making so many teen comedy movies. But the thing I was most excited about was that I was also up for an audition for like a page, for like a one-liner or something, in theater at the Amundsen. I forget what it was. It was a Maxwell Anderson play, a period play about Queen Elizabeth or something. And that was the thing I was most excited about because it was a theater piece. And the other stuff was just, film and TV. And that didn't have in my household, theater was the most respected thing. So that was what was going to get me cred. So in a certain way, I think the fact that it was just one of several things I was doing that day. I didn't put as much pressure on myself. And so I was able to be more relaxed in the audition and just go for it. And it turns out actually one of the reasons that Lawrence Bassoff, I don't know that it's the reason he cast me, but he had grown up and had gone to film school with an editor named Michael Miller, who was like a second cousin of mine, and who had been a huge fan of my father's. And so because he was related to my father, Larry Bassoff knew of my father, and so there was this weird sort of connection when I don't know if it was the first time I went in, the second time I went in, he said, you know what, I know your cousin, and he always talked about your dad, and so there was, nepotism runs deep in the entertainment industry. So I think that it gave him a predisposition to like me. He wouldn't have cast me if he didn't think I was good, but definitely that sort of stuff, that connection, it makes it exciting for people to work with people who they have had some connection with before. So that was it. And he enjoyed meeting my dad came out to the set one day, and he enjoyed meeting him.
Oh, nice.
Lawrence was a really, really nice guy. He was a sweetheart. I guess the next film he did, which I don't know whether he wrote or, I don't know, got hired by Hamburger, I think it was called, and he ended up getting taken off of it after just a few days of shooting.
Oh, I didn't know he
directed the whole story. But I think he started off as the director on it, and there were issues with the producers or something. And I don't know what, every once in a while I'll see his name somewhere, but I don't know what other things he did. He was such a nice guy, and I thought actually the script he wrote for Weekend Pass had a little bit more heart to it than some of the other teen comedies at the time. I
agree.
I don't know that the finished product ended up showing it, but it seemed like each of the characters did go through a change, which doesn't always happen in those movies. And, he did get us together once or twice prior to try and rehearse some of the stuff. He wanted to try and go about it, and considering Crown International Pictures at the time, they were masters at marketing, because they made those films for 17 cents. And so they'd hire all these really talented people right out of film school to be the crew, and they got all these young actors who didn't usually have a lot of credits already, so that they didn't have to pay a lot of, they could pay minimum on that for all of that. They'd shoot them really fast, and really, like, they realized, if they can pay overtime instead of going into another day, they would do that. And I'm convinced that they had their second AD's watches were constantly being played with. So I was always, since I'd grown up in the business, my father had always said, keep track of your own time, because some of those guys are paid to, if you go 15 minutes over, to sign you out 15 minutes earlier, things like that. So I was always keeping watch for all of us. And the other actors started referring to me as their attorney, because if they came in and tried to get us to sign out early, even though we hadn't really been released yet, stuff like that, I'd always call them on it. But they were, it was a fun shoot. It was really kind of grueling. There were some 17-hour days there, which weren't necessary because we were in town in the locations, But it was they were trying to get everything in really short. I think it was a 17-day shoot altogether for the whole film, which was crazy in those days.
Yeah,
You can get away with things a lot easier now, because now the cameras are so much better, and you're doing video, and it's a lot less expensive, and you can do takes right afterwards and look at them, so they can get stuff done a lot quicker now than they used to be able to get it done, because the setups can happen so much more quickly. But back then, it was you could wait several hours between setups.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that that Lawrence Bassoff was the original director on Hamburger. I do know he directed another movie for Crown a couple years later, this really good movie called Hunk, which is kind of a reworking of Bedazzled. It's a pretty good movie and stuff. I don't know what happened to him after that, though. But I do agree with you, though. I do think the movie does have a lot of heart to it. I think it almost reminds me of the kind of movies Judd Apatow makes now.
Right, but with bigger budgets.
Yeah, with bigger budgets.
Bigger budgets, more time to shoot. And I thought that the movie suffered some from trying to do too much travel log in Los Angeles. It felt like it had some there was too much stuff where they were showing Los Angeles instead of telling the story.
Right.
And I think that it could have focused a little more on that. And I thought in the script it did. And again, it was they were cutting it as they were doing it, and so it was they were a machine, Crown. They were really brilliant business people. They really knew how to work the system. So that almost all of their films made a lot of money for them, even though they shot them for not very much money. I think Weekend Pass was the 50th highest grossing film, but a few of the weeks it was top 20. But they were really smart. They at the time, making prints was enormously expensive because obviously it was before digital. And so instead of making 2,000 prints and putting it on screens all over, they would do 400 prints, and they'd go in, and it was before the internet, they could saturate a market. And they'd go in and they'd blast radio and some TV for a week before they released the film, and then they'd release it everywhere in that particular region. And then they'd take half the screens out the second week, 3/4 of the screens out the third week, and then just leave it in a couple of theaters to pick up sort of the last remnants of people who would want to see it. Could do more, and then boom, they were into the next area. And it was just a really brilliant marketing scheme. And that way, it didn't matter whether they, because their films were not going to be highbrow. It wasn't going to be reviewers who drove the kids to see their films. It was not the initial thing. So whether they had good or bad word of mouth, or they had good or bad reviews, they could make money on their films because they marketed them so well.
Yeah, it was a huge hit for Crown. It made $21 million, I see.
Right, and I think they made it for $800,000 or something. Yeah, they
Wow.
did well, but we all got minimum. I mean, the amount of money we made on it was like buckus, but they did great. We actually, me and Chip McAllister, we both lobbied for to try and get them to make a sequel. We thought we could have just Weekend Pass 2 or Return to Weekend Pass. But they never did it, sadly.
Yeah.
I think they only had one other film that made more money. I think the one the previous year, 2 years, like My Tutor or something.
Yes.
I think it was called My Tutor. I think that made even more money for them because it was every child, teenage boy's fantasy.
Yeah, and then the next year, Tomboy, the Betsy Russell movie, made, I think, the third most with this and My Tutor.
Yeah, but they did. I mean, they did really well for a really long time. It's funny. Every time I drive by that building, they used to be on La Cienega, and every time a little south of Wilshire, and every time I drive by that building, I just remembered going up there all the time when we were shooting.
Yeah.
But it was nice. I mean, it was Phil Hartman was in that, and that was before he became a star. And Lynn Stewart was in it, who did Pee-wee's Playhouse and a lot of other films. And
Lynn's been on the podcast.
A friend of mine prior to that, because my brother had directed her play.
Yeah, Lynn's been on the podcast twice. She's a sweet lady.
Yeah, she's very funny.
Yeah,
really funny.
She should have been a much bigger star than she was.
Yeah, I mean, she had a good career.
Yeah.
And then Chip and I became really good friends, and our lives just sort of took us apart, but he and I had become very good friends, and we hung out a lot together for the next few years after the movie, and then we kind of just, our lives drifted apart. But we're still friendly on Facebook, and every once in a while we'll call each other up every few years and sort of catch up on everything.
Yeah.
And DW and I were both kind of from the theater, and DW and I were friendly at the time, but we, again, just sort of fell out of touch. Every once in a while, there'll be an actor because he runs an acting studio with his wife, Joanne Barron.
Right.
They have for 30 years. And so, like, even a couple of weeks ago, I met a friend of one of my sons, and he's studying with DW. So I said, well, please say hi to him for me. I haven't seen him in 30-something years.
Yeah.
But I always really liked DW.
Yeah, I tried to get an interview with DW, but he was super busy. And Patrick Hauser, whatever happened to him?
I don't know. He was such a good-looking guy, and he did the movie Hot Dog immediately after us.
Yeah.
But that kind of tanked. It just didn't quite work. And I don't know what he did after that. He was actually quite a nice guy, but he seemed a little bit caught up with his agents and all the Hollywood showbizy stuff. He was not quite as grounded, I think, as maybe DW and I and Chip were. I mean, Chip had quite a bit of success earlier with
The Greatest.
Yeah, The Greatest, right? Yeah, playing Muhammad Ali, and he's not doing well. He ended up winning The Amazing Race with his wife a while back, and I think they do real estate now. And every once in a while, he would go back and dabble in doing some entertainment stuff again. But I remember he was good friends with Magic Johnson and Marcus Allen. And so Magic came to our screening when we did a screening, I think at MGM or Sony or something. And then I went to Chip's wedding, and Magic was there too. It was fun to meet him. And
yeah,
it was a really fun time. The shooting of the film was fun. When you're not working as an actor, nobody wants to have anything to do with you. When you're working, you're treated like a king. It's a really strange feeling.
Yep.
When you're working, everybody's on doing that. I actually, I learned, I've done a lot of teaching since then. I always use one of the lessons. Because one day, my alarm didn't go off, and I was late to the set, which was a huge problem. Because, I don't think they ended up having to lose any time, but I've used that for years as a saying, you cannot be late.
Yeah.
They were shooting in the Valley, and I was living in West LA, and I don't know, my alarm didn't go off, and so I think I was about 30 minutes it's a huge, huge issue that, no actors, you just can't be late. It costs too much money. So I was just really embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even out drinking late. I think my alarm didn't go off.
Yeah.
And then, they didn't, and I wasn't late before, it wasn't like they had to call me to wake me up, but I woke up and looked at the clock and went, holy crap. So, but that was interesting, and the people on it were really nice, overall. As I said, I really liked the cinematographer. I don't know whether he ever did anything else after that. Brian England, that was his name. I thought he was very talented. On a shoestring budget, he made some very interesting shots, I thought. And he was really easy to work with. So I'm not, it was, every once in a while I'll look at it, and I go, you know what? I don't feel terrible about the work I did in it. I thought I was perfectly decent. There was one edit that I didn't like that made me look like I was overreacting to something that happened in it, because I cut to somebody else's reaction before my reaction.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like about doing theater is that the actor is completely in charge of their own performance in theater, whereas on film, you can be edited in a certain way, and it's not necessarily how it happened in real time.
Yeah. Probably the most memorable scene you had was with the Asian massage lady in high heels.
Doing the spit doubles.
Yeah. Was that fun to shoot?
It was actually, that was one of the really long days because there were a number of scenes in the hotel room, and it was shot it was somewhere in West LA, just like a warehouse where they built out the set. They built out the bathroom part of the set. They built out the room part of the set, and it was kind of grueling because they shot so many different things in that, and we all got kept. I think they shot everything there in like 2 days, and the second day I think I was there for 17 hours. So I think we shot that really, really late. I think because obviously they want to shoot the stuff with the most people so they can let people go as quickly as possible so they don't have to pay overtime. And I think the only ones left were me and the gal who played Chop Susie, whose name is going out of my head, who was really nice. And I think, I think it was the first time she'd ever done anything topless. And so, but we were really, she was nice, we were friendly, and it's strange, those 80s exploitation, films, where again, it was kind of gratuitous stuff that was all shot for like teenage boys. But it was fun. It was fun to shoot. She was holding on to something up above me so they could show her walking up me, but she was really putting almost no weight on me at the time. I think they put like a big pipe above that she could hold on to so they could shoot her. Because I don't think you ever see her full standing on me.
No.
That would have hurt like hell.
Yeah.
And then we just shot it. We shot that for quite a long time because they didn't know how it was going to cut together with the different reactions of when she was stepping and the different sounds I was doing. And, it was shot at a different time, the boys in the bathroom reacting to what we were doing. So that was, at a completely different time. And I can't even, I think they shot their reactions before we had shot it. So they didn't even know what exactly I was doing or how I was sounding. So that stuff, the soundtrack got cut into their reactions later.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, again, it's interesting how that stuff happens. So we didn't exactly, do it and in real time.
Yeah, that's a very funny scene, though.
And then I tried to find myself the idea of me being twisted into, up. I had to figure out how to put myself in the most twisted up position possible to have I think it was my idea to have the card stuck in my, I think it was stuck in my teeth.
Yeah. Then you played one of Roy's ski buddies in Better Off Dead.
I did. We shot that for quite a while, and I'm only only in it a few times. I'm in it, periodically here and there. But it was a really fun shoot because we got to go up and, when we weren't shooting, we got to go ski. And we're up in Utah for about a week or 10 days, which was a lot of fun. And I'd done some skiing, so not that I was anything great, but I at least could move around on my skis, which not all the actors could.
Yeah.
But that was a really fun shoot. And Dan Schneider was in it. He was really funny.
Yeah.
I had originally read for the role of the sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it was a case where they went for a really, more twistedy, nerdy guy than I was. And he was terrific in it. I thought he was very funny. Curtis Anderson.
Curtis Armstrong.
Good fun. Curtis Armstrong, right. Good. I really liked him. And I thought he was really funny. I don't remember whether I felt like he was completely cut, whether he came off in that film as funny as he was. Because he was cracking us up a lot when he was doing the stuff.
Yeah.
So was Dan. Dan was, there were some really funny things Dan did that I'm not sure they completely captured in the film itself. I thought the script, when I read it, was hysterical. I was falling out of my chair reading it. And then it didn't always... It's funny, I'm a big fan of John Cusack, and I think he's really talented. But I felt like the combination of him and the director in that, I felt like I would have liked to have seen him play it even more straight, more of a straight man. And John's really funny, and he wanted to be funny in the funny film. But I kind of felt like the film would have been funnier if he was completely straight and all of the chaos was happening around him.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was still a funny film, but I thought it was even funnier in the script than it was on the screen.
Mm-hmm. You're in the scene where go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When Curtis, when they're at the school dance, and Curtis does that exaggerated laugh. Do you remember that?
I'm trying to remember it.
Roy.
No, I don't.
Roy goes over to him and Cusack. It says, "Hey, you two are the cutest couple here. You better shave her a little closer before you kiss her goodnight." And then he starts doing this exaggerated laugh. And, Roy and all his friends and Amanda Wisp, they're all standing there like, what the fuck? And then he's just like, doing this trolling laugh to make it sound like it was actually that funny,
I'm vaguely remembering it now that you told me. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's gotten well over 20 years ago.
And ironically, there's a guy standing next to Amanda Wisp who's wearing a Freddy Krueger sweater.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah. I brought that up to her at a convention, and she was like, "Oh, God, I got to go back and watch that. I never realized that."
Freddy Krueger, Bob Englund, he actually studied with my father. He was a student of my dad's.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember, there was a couple of other things. So I guess it was me and Frankie Avalon Jr., right? Mm-hmm. And then Joe, I'm trying to remember what Joe's last name was, who played the other guy. And it was Ski Buddy 1, or I don't know. There were three of us.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Aaron, who played Roy, was a replacement. I guess, I don't remember who it was who was originally supposed to play it, but they lost him at the last, a week or two before. He got another gig that he thought would be a bigger gig. It was someone's son, some famous guy's son. Name's gone out of my head.
Yeah.
But he was the son of a famous actor who was supposed to do the part originally and then dropped out. And so Aaron got hired. And Aaron and I both worked for the same restaurant chain at the time. So Aaron worked at Gladstone for Fish, and I worked at the Jetty right before we both went and did this film. So it was kind of amusing.
Yeah, the guy who
he was always...
the guy who choreographed the ski scenes for the movie is Mike Marvin, who also choreographed the ski scenes for Hot Dog, and ironically, he ended up directing Hamburger.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
Well, I remember there was a little bit of a scandal on the set. I may be telling tales out of school because I guess that the director of photography and the director, Steve Holland, and I think it was Izzy something, was the director of photography, and they went skiing or something at one point, and so they weren't available to watch the rushes. I don't know. We just remembered hearing about some scandal or something about how that the producers were upset that they both gone skiing after shooting when they were supposed to have gone to a screening or something. You know how rumors go flying around.
Yeah.
But that was a really fun movie to shoot. I was surprised when it came out that it didn't do better than it did, and I was disappointed because I shot a few weeks on it. So I think I made as much or more money on that as I did on Weekend Pass. And but because Weekend Pass did so much better at the box office that in its initial release, that's how residuals were based. So the money that came in afterwards for Better Off Dead was not very good because it did so badly in its initial release. Of course, then it became a kind of a cult classic.
Yeah, Diane, she just reunited with John Cusack at a convention a couple months ago.
Oh, fun.
And she got some closure because he had a falling out with Steve Holland when they were filming One Crazy Summer because he didn't like the way Better Off Dead turned out. But she told me that he told her, he said, I liked making the movie, I liked working with you, but I just think the movie should have been a lot better than it was, you know. But he enjoyed making the movie.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. I remember he was really fun to hang out with, and we had a good time. Later on, I got to know his sister really well because I ran a theater in Los Angeles, and she used to rent space for me. She ran a nonprofit for a while before she became kind of famous doing. I think she played Jeff Foxworthy's wife on series and then did a lot of other film work. Annie.
Yeah.
Older sister Annie Cusack. And so she and I became really good friends for a few years when she was renting space from me. And I would, every once in a while, he showed up when she was doing an event, and I'd run into him now and again. He was a very nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Good actor. Very good actor, I think.
Mm-hmm. He's very good. So why did that end up being your last movie?
Well, I wasn't getting hired. I was up for a lot of stuff, but I didn't end up getting any work. I don't know why. No, I did. Yeah, better. And then I transitioned. I went to, about 2 years later, I went to Europe for about 6 months and decided that I wanted to, I guess it was actually 85. So that came out, I shot that at the end of 84. Is that right? End of 83?
Yeah, 84.
I went to Europe in 85 or 86, and I decided that I was going to focus exclusively on, or almost exclusively on theater. That if I wasn't going to make a lot of money, if I was going to have to be, working other stuff in order to support what I was doing, I wanted to put my energy into the thing that I really loved. So I focused primarily on theater. I started directing a lot, and then I got my own theater company started, and I ran a theater in Los Angeles for a really long time. I still occasionally would do some commercials or some SAG extra work to make money, but it was really just to support my theater company. And then I left town and ran theaters in 3 other states. So I ran a theater in Kansas for a long time, then one in Miami, Florida, and one in Pennsylvania. So I stopped, going out. I really stopped acting. I did some theater gigs. I did a show in Alaska. I did a show in New Mexico. I did work for South Coast Rep. I did a few other theater pieces, but I really ended up moving into directing and producing.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever audition for anything that became super iconic?
Yeah, Karate Kid. I auditioned for the lead in Karate Kid, but again, they cast, Ralph
Macchio,
who was, about almost a foot shorter than I was, which, for that. So that happened to me quite a bit, that my face looked so young and innocent
Mm-hmm.
but I was tall, and I was also kind of snarky and acerbic in personality, and so it didn't always who I was didn't necessarily match with the way I looked, and I think that was one of the issues in my not getting more work. Um, so on stage, it didn't matter so much. I wasn't in close up, so I did a fair amount of good roles on stage.
Mm-hmm. And I was researching, and I found out a few years ago you had an incredible, life-changing situation.
Yes, a year and a half ago, a year ago October, I got contacted. Part of the way I made ends meet when I was an actor and starting my theater company was to be a sperm donor. That starting in October of 2017, one of the donor kids found me, and I decided to sort of embrace the experience. She'd already found a whole bunch of her half siblings, and so as of currently, actually a few days ago, there are now 28 that I know of, and I've met 23 of them, and I'm going to be meeting a 24th in a couple of weeks up in San Francisco.
Oh my God, that just got to be an incredible.
That's really crazy.
It's got to be an incredible responsibility.
It is. Well, I mean, there's no financial responsibility, and certainly I had no hand whatsoever in raising any of them. But it doesn't mean that I don't feel some sort of obligation when I meet them to at least hopefully be a positive presence in their life if they want me to be. So some of them really I've formed a close bond with. In fact, I just got back last week from traveling with one of the girls in Europe for 3 weeks. And the one who found me and I, Rachel, she and I talk almost every day, and we also went to Europe last year together. So some of them I've become very close with. Other ones, we're friendly, but not necessarily close. So it's all different depending on what the kid wants. I try and be that for them.
Yeah. Wow. God, I just couldn't fathom that. I mean, the money must have been great.
It was not great, but it was not terrible, and I was getting paid for what I was going to do anyway. And how many people get paid for their habits? And it was a lot that if I could work 6 hours in a waiting shift or go in and make a donation and have those 5 of those 6 hours to work on theater or doing other things I wanted to do, it was a good gig for me. So and now it's actually turned out to be like the best thing that ever happened to me, because I'm so enjoying getting to know all these different kids and seeing these different lives, and it's given me a lot of different outlook on life.
Wow. Do you have like any of your own kids with a wife or anything?
I don't. No, I had a stepdaughter with my ex-wife, but she has a dad who's very very close to her and was a very good dad, and so I was just another hopefully positive adult in her life. So no, I never raised my own children. So it's that's been quite a new experience to even have that sense of attachment, that biological sense of attachment. So
wow.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it won't turn into hundreds of kids, but I'm already moving up the Wikipedia list of like the most prolific males in the history of the world. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember back in the mid '80s, there was a fertility doctor in Texas who was using his own sperm to impregnate patients, and they like went through a trial or something like that. It was a really weird and creepy situation,
That is really creepy. Yeah, well, there was a lot of deception involved in it, and that's the creepy part of it, is when, if he was doing that and telling the patients that he was going to do that, that would have been just, and they want to do it, that would have been fine. But it's the deception that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's still no rules whatsoever, really, in the United States regarding sperm and egg donation, and there should be. Not that the industry is doing anything, necessarily bad, but that there does need to be regulation and some rules and best practices put into place, because it can cause some real problems, and people, I think everybody has a right to know what their background is, and certainly medically, but even historically,
was it anonymous when you did it?
Oh, it was anonymous back then. Yeah, no, there was no way anyone could have found me back then. It wasn't until big data and the internet and everything that Rachel, the one who found me, was able to put together a whole bunch of different pieces of information. And she finally found me through IMDb, because she knew I'd been a performer and was able to piece together my actual birth date and knew that I was Jewish and a performer. And so she went through IMDb, and that's how she eventually located me.
Oh, wow. So,
yeah, pretty crazy story. There's a good article online you can find on NBC online. A really good article. There've been a bunch of articles and little features done on us, but that one I think is maybe the best written of them all.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. So, when did you start acting? When did you start teaching acting?
Well, I started taking acting classes when I was like 13, but even in elementary school, I was putting plays together with my friends, scenes and plays and writing things and doing stuff. And then I started taking serious acting classes with John Levy, who was first an actor and then director who studied with my father for a long time and was the associate director at my father and David Alexander's theater called the Academy of Stage and Cinema Arts. So when I was 13, I started taking his teenagers acting class. He went on to become a very major casting director. John Frank Levy cast all sorts of stuff for Universal, ER, and lots of other things. But he was my first acting teacher, and then I studied with lots of other people after that. My father, of course, and Stella Adler, and Paul Sills, who created Second City, and David Craig, who was the musical theater guru. So I had a lot of different influences.
Mm-hmm. When did you start teaching acting?
Professionally?
Yeah.
My first professional show was Julius Caesar at the Globe Playhouse in Los Angeles in 1975 with a lot of equity actors in the cast. I had a small role of Brutus's servant, Lucius. The most notable person to come out of that show was Ed Harris, who played one of the conspirators and one of the other roles in it. And that was, I think he was fresh out of CalArts or something. But before he'd done his first film. So he was in that. And then I think my first really paid gig was when I was 18. I did a play called Plays for Living, where we would tour around, and it was like educational theater. We'd go and do the play and then do talkbacks with people. And then got my SAG card at 18, my equity card at 19.
Mm-hmm. But you teach acting to children now, right?
No, not to children, but I've taught acting at professionally and at colleges and universities, and I taught at a high school 1 year back when I was 22.
Oh, okay. I was confused there.
Yeah, but I taught at the University of Miami. I taught it for the school Independence Community College that was affiliated with the William H. Theater Festival, which was the theater that I ran. And then I did lots of workshops all over the country for both teachers, theater teachers, and for college and high school kids.
Well, Peter, you are blessed, and you've got great stories, and I thank you for coming on today for my birthday show.
Well, I'm happy to do it, and I'm sorry that it took so long for me to get in touch with you, get back to you, and I appreciate your interest and excitement about these crazy 80s things.
Yeah. Yes, I love the 80s, and I'm glad I guess, did you have fun in Europe?
Oh, I had a blast. Yeah, I love Europe. There's nothing I like as much as walking around Paris at night. It's just the greatest thing ever. It's so beautiful and so much history, and seeing all the people who are excited to be there and the lovers standing on the bridges. It's just quite wonderful. By the way, I hope you'll talk to Chip McAllister at some point if you haven't, because he's a great guy.
Oh, I've been reaching out to him forever, and I haven't heard back from him.
Oh, really? All right, I'll give him a call and tell him you're fun interviews and see if I can get him in touch with you. So
I appreciate that.
Be well, and I hope you make it to Los Angeles.
Thank you, Peter. And someday I'll make it.
My pleasure.
Someday I'll make it to Europe as well.
I encourage you. It's a great place to visit.
Awesome. Well, you have yourself a great
care.
day. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Well, there you have it. Peter Ellenstein. Isn't he a cool dude? Yes, he is. I'm so very blessed. It was a great birthday interview for my birthday, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Peter. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me. Later, dudes.